John Locke was an English philosopher born a little later than Descartes in the beginning of the 17th century. He was an influential philosopher whose ideas greatly inspired the European Enlightenment and the United States Constitution.
René Descartes was a French philosopher born at the end of the 16th century who was one of the key thinkers who influenced the scientific revolution. When it comes to knowledge and understanding, I am a rationalist. Rationalists like me believe that knowledge of the world can be gained by the exercise of pure reason. The rationalist thesis states that some propositions by a particular subject area, S, are knowable to us by intuition alone. Still others are knowable by being deduced from intuitive propositions. As a rationalist, I believe that knowledge relies on absolute certainty and that people are already born with ideas. When it came to education, I believe that books should not be the basis of our knowledge. This is because they do not provide the answers to everything. Logic is my authority, so I say, I think, therefore I am.
Regarding my beliefs on knowledge and understanding, I fall on the opposite end of the spectrum than you, and classify myself as an empiricist. The empiricist thesis states that we have no source of knowledge in S or for the concepts we use in S other than sense experience. Therefore, empiricists like myself believe that the source of one's knowledge of the world comes through experiences, specifically the senses. I do not believe that humans are born with any sort of pre-existing knowledge or logic. Thus, I oppose the rationalist ideas of innate knowledge and concept, supported by you. However, I do believe that humans are born with a certain level of reasoning and intuition. Reasoning can be used to understand our many experiences through life, therefore allowing us to obtain knowledge.
Because of the fact that I was born to understand that I exist, it is then impossible to doubt and certainly true. This is the backbone for how I understand God exists. God wanted the world to be known, and so he gave us humans who know they exist the tools to know it. What tools, you may ask? Reason. With intuitive reason, I first look at something and see if I can understand how it works. With deductive reason, I infer relations between things. And with abductive reason, I use logical inference, which starts with an observation and then seeks to find the simplest form and the most likely explanation. Interwoven within the understanding that I exist forces my integrity to lie in my ability to think. Using my deductive method, I can work through any problem placed before me. In doubting, if I don't have any previous knowledge of the subject, I know that I should immediately doubt it. Next, I would divide and conquer and break down the problem into small parts, and then take the smallest of them and work through it. In that direction, from smallest to greatest, I would work through all the problems. And finally, in reviewing, I would finish working through my thoughts and go back and check to see that I didn't leave anything out. A thought that I've been pondering for a while now is, how do we know that we're not living in a dream? My dreams just feel as if I was awake, so how can you explain this?
It is very obvious that we're not living in a dream. You believe that our senses are always deceiving us, and there is no way to tell that we are living in a dream. I know this is not true because knowledge can only be achieved through the senses and not by some innate ideas from our mind, as you believe. If this were true, then all children from birth would hold the same knowledge as adults, and obviously this is not true. All people are born with a blank slate. Although we disagree on this point, we both agree that God exists. From what I believe, the existence of God is derived from the fact that we exist and we think. I know intuitively that I exist because I'm able to think about my existence and understand it. Our ability to demonstrate our thinking is proof that God exists, and is an explanation of how we know we are not living in a dream. Similar to Aquinas' proof, the fact that we are able to think and every thinking thing proceeds from some other thinking thing, there must have been a first thinker, and that thinker being God. I believe that God is a wise and all-powerful being who created man, making mankind his property. It is pretty clear to me that God exists because of the simple fact that we all have our own abstract, complex ideas of God, no matter what our beliefs are. These ideas are not dreams, rather they are rational thoughts, all of which have God as a being that possesses all cognitive abilities to an infinite degree.
I I strongly believe in Scripture, and especially in the book of Genesis, as I believe the discovery of the necessary existence of an eternal mind sufficiently leads us into the knowledge of God. It implies that all other knowing beings that have a beginning must depend on Him, and have only such ways of knowledge and kinds of power as He gives them, and therefore that He made not only those knowing beings, but also the less excellent, or the inanimate, pieces of the universe. And this establishes power and providence, and all His other attributes necessarily follow. We are indeed the property of God. God made us all.
I don't necessarily believe Genesis tells us everything about our beginning. I think that God is different from the one who is portrayed in the Scriptures. It is my belief that God is a supremely perfect being. The idea of a supremely perfect being means that this being has all perfections and He has no defects. Some of these perfections include omnipotence, immutability, eternality, and simplicity. God, as a perfect being, is incapable of fraud and deception. My idea of God is one who is distinctly and clearly infinite. God does not rely on anything else in order to exist. However, all other substances rely on God for their existence.
So I guess I see some similarities in the way that we both believe that God is indeed powerful. But I see God as the infinitely wise author of man's being. As such, I think it's different because I believe in Scripture and you don't, but I truly value that God has endowed man with the power to think, to understand, and God has predicted this mind to neither stagnate or stop at perceptions and reflection, but to move towards something much more.
Clearly, there are both similarities and differences in the philosophies of Descartes and Locke. Therefore, I believe that it is not entirely accurate to state that the two men's philosophies are completely different without any debate. However, the similarities presented still seem to be much less plentiful when compared with the differences. Both philosophers are offering new ways of looking at knowledge and of God. In many ways, Locke attacks Descartes, rejecting some of his ideas about dreams and reality, and accepting some about the existence of God. Nonetheless, we have tried to illustrate that despite a historical connection and many similarities, the two men's ideas about religion and God are fundamentally different. In particular, Descartes and Locke disagree on the origins of God, innate ideas, and on knowledge.